boots are already on the stairs when she realizes there is no more time. The chalk is still in her hand. The last lesson she wrote on the board is one word: home. Outside, in the cold street of an occupied town, a truck engine growls like an angry animal. Soldiers shout in a language the children do not understand. Inside the classroom, 20 small hearts beat so loudly it feels like the walls can hear them. Imagine this: you are a teacher. Your only crime is that you refuse to hand over the children hiding under your floor. You are not a soldier. You do not carry a gun. And yet, in a few minutes, men with guns will carry you away as if you are the most dangerous person in the city. What do you protect when war comes to your classroom, your life, or their innocence? Now, let me tell you the full story. Part 1. The capture in the cell. Her name is Anna Kaczmarek, and before the war she was known for two things: her soft voice and her stubborn heart. She taught in a small town school in occupied Poland, where the map on the wall still showed a country that no longer existed. Every morning she walked through streets divided by uniforms: gray for the occupiers, brown and faded for everyone else. She wore the same blue dress, patched at the sleeves, and carried her worn leather satchel like a shield. When the soldiers first came to the school, they did not shout. They smiled. Which was worse, they stood in the doorway, tall and clean in their uniforms. One of them spoke in broken Polish. From today, he said, no more teaching lies. No more old songs. Only what we approve. They made her remove the old map. They replaced books. They scratched out lines in history with red pencil. The children watched, eyes wide, as pages turned from stories into orders. Weeks passed. Rules tightened. Curfews shortened. Names disappeared from the attendance list, one by one. Some moved away. Some relocated. Some simply never came back. And then, one cold evening, a woman knocked at Anna's door. She was shaking so hard she could barely speak. Her son, maybe 9 years old, clung to her skirt. They are taking the children. The woman whispered. They took my neighbor's boy this morning. For work, they say. For relocation, they say. Please, please, you are the teacher. They respect you. Help us. Anna looked at the boy. His eyes were too big for his face. He held his schoolbook like a life jacket. What is his name? Anna asked. Jacob, the woman said. He loves your class. He loves your stories. Something inside Anna hardened. The next day, when rumors spread that soldiers would search homes for excess mouthed, Anna made a quiet decision. The school would become a hiding place. Under the classroom floor was a narrow crawl space used years ago to fix pipes and hide coal during shortages. Now, it became something else. Listen carefully. She told the children she trusted the most, the ones marked by fear and whispers. If you ever hear 3 knocks on the radiator, you come to my classroom. No bags, no talking. Just come, and we will play a game of silence. They practiced once. She lifted a loose board behind her desk, showed them the dark space below, and smiled. It's a secret cave, she said softly. A place where words hide when the world forgets how to be kind. The first time sirens wailed and soldiers marched past. 3 children hid under her floor. The boards trembled with every step above them. She kept teaching with her calm voice, as if the world outside was not breaking apart. It worked. The soldiers moved on. But war is patient. It watches. It listens. One gray morning, a girl who was always late came running into class. Breathless. They took my brother. She gasped. They know children are hiding somewhere. The soldiers say there is a teacher who helps them. Anna felt the classroom tilt for a moment. like a ship catching a wave. She forced herself to breathe. That afternoon, the soldiers came. The first thing she heard was not the truck, not the boots. It was silent. The street outside went quiet, as if the whole town held its breath. Then the slam of truck doors, the metallic click of rifles shifting, the heavy steps of men who believed the ground belonged to them. Inside the school, the children felt it before they heard it. Some began to cry. Some clutched their pencils like weapons. Anna's heart pounded, but her voice stayed steady. Game of silence. She whispered, "Now, quickly." 3 knocks on the radiator. The children who knew rushed to the front. Small bodies slipped behind the desk, down into the darkness beneath the floor. She counted too many heads, too many small hands grabbing at her skirt. There is not enough room, she whispered, panic rising. She chose with her eyes. The weakest, the ones rumored to be on lists, the children whose names had been spoken too often by soldiers. To the others, she said, "Go back to your seats. You were never here early. You were never here at all." The last child disappeared under the floor just as the door to the classroom burst open. 3 soldiers, 1 officer, a gust of cold air that smelled of cigarettes and wet leather. "Fräulein Kaxmer," the officer said in precise German. Then in accented Polish, "We have some questions for you." She stood very still. The chalk in her hand trembled once, then stopped. Under her feet, the floorboards seemed to hold their breath. The officer walked slowly between the desks, trailing his gloved fingers along the wood. Children stared at him with wide, animal eyes. "We have been told," he said, "that there are too many children in this town. Mouths we do not need. Yet some seem to always escape our counts. Curious, isn't it?" He turned to her. "Maybe," he said. "A kind teacher has been helping them vanish." Anna met his eyes. "I am a teacher," she replied quietly. "I help children learn letters and numbers. That is all." The officer smiled, but his eyes did not. "We will say." They searched the classroom. Drawers opened, books lifted, bags inspected. Soldiers looked under desks, behind the blackboard. One even stomped lightly on the floor, as if testing its truth. Underneath, in the suffocating dark, small hearts hammered against dirt. One child bit his hand to stop himself from crying out. A loose piece of wood shifted with a soft creak. The sound was barely more than a sigh, but in the stillness it sounded like a confession. The officer's head snapped toward the teacher's desk. He walked over, stood with his boots inches from the loose board. He looked at Anna, then down, then up again. "Some children," he murmured, "are very good at hiding." His hand moved toward his pistol, not to draw it, just resting there, reminding the room of power. "Lift it," he said. The world narrowed to the space between his command and her reaction. Anna felt sweat gather at the base of her neck. The chalk dust on her fingers seemed suddenly heavy. She could say no. She could pretend confusion. But his men were already watching her too closely. So she bent down. Slowly, her fingers touched the edge of the board. She felt the tiny vibration of a child's trembling breath. She lifted. Eyes met eyes in the dark. Little faces, pale with terror. Arms wrapped around knees. A doll clutched so tightly its cloth body was twisted. The room seemed to stop. One of the younger girls made a small, desperate sound, like a trapped animal. The officer's lips curled. "There you are," he said softly. "Our missing mouths." The children were dragged out, one by one, some crying, some silent, some clinging to Anna's skirt until soldiers pried their fingers loose. Anna moved without thinking. "Please," she said, grabbing the officer's sleeve. "They are only children. Take me instead. They do not understand the war. They do not." The officer's glove cracked across her face. The slap sent her stumbling back, her cheek burning. "You do not bargain with us," he hissed. "You do not tell us what to take." He turned to his men. "Arrest her," he said, charged with harboring undesirables and obstructing relocation orders. Cold metal closed around her wrists. As they marched her out of the classroom, the children watched. Some cried her name. Some were too shocked to move. Underneath everything, between desks and silence, dust rose slowly in the light. On the board, the last word she wrote remained. Home. The journey to the prison was a blur of sound and color. The truck rattled over cobblestones, then smoother roads. Through the small gap in the canvas, Anna caught glimpses of the town. She knew the bakery where she bought bread, now boarded up the square where children once played, now lined with posters and soldiers. Her wrists hurt where the metal rubbed raw skin. Beside her, two other prisoners sat, a man with a bloody lip and a woman clutching a torn coat. No one spoke. Their silence was a language of its own. After some time, the town vanished. Fields rolled by, broken by patches of forest and occasional ruins. The sky was low, heavy with gray. Somewhere, far away, thunderer artillery growled. When the truck finally stopped, the first thing she heard was dogs. They barked in short, sharp bursts. Chains rattled. Voices shouted in the harsh rhythm of commands. The canvas lifted. Cold air hit her face, carrying the smell of mud, smoke, and something else she did not want to name. Out, a voice barked. They stumbled down onto packed, frozen ground. Ahead of them rose a fence topped with barbed wire, like a crown of thorns around a kingdom of misery. Watchtowers stood at the corners, their dark windows watching everything. A sign hung above the main gate, its foreign words neat and mockingly polite. Anna could not read them, but she understood what they meant. You do not leave. Inside the gate, the world shrank to mud, barracks, and orders. Men were herded one way, women another. Dogs wove between them, teeth flashing. A guard wrote something in a ledger as if taking inventory of furniture. Not human lives. Anna's name became a number. They took her coat, her satchel, the small silver cross she wore around her neck. They gave her a faded dress that smelled of sweat and fear. The cell they threw her into was narrow and damp, its stone walls sweating with cold. A single barred window high above let in a mean strip of light. Two iron bunks clung to the walls. A bucket sat in the corner, full enough to shame. On the lower bunk, a woman with sharp cheekbones and tired eyes looked up. "No?" she asked. Anna nodded. The woman patted the empty space beside her. "Sit," she said. "Y'all need your strength." They like to take it. Anna sat. The bunk creaked. Somewhere down the corridor, someone coughed, then kept coughing until the sound became a plea. "What did they say you did?" the woman asked. "I hid children," Anna whispered. Saying it aloud made it feel unreal and more real at the same time. The woman's eyes softened. "Just a little. Then you did something right," she said quietly. "That's why you're here." Outside the cell, a guard's keys clinked like small, metallic laughs. The door slammed shut. Part 2. The Zalm and breaking point days in the prison did not pass. They scraped by. There was no clock in the cell, but time announced itself in routines: the clatter of boots at dawn, the rattle of tin cups at mealtime, the distant shouts from the yard. Between these sounds lay long stretches of silence, heavy with thoughts that could not be spoken. Anna learned the rules quickly. Stand when told. Do not speak during roll call. Do not look a guard in the eye for too long. Do not collapse, even when your legs tremble. Food came in the form of a thin, pale soup and a slice of bread that tasted more of sawdust than grain. She divided the bread in half each time, out of habit. In her mind, she still sat at the school desk, splitting snacks between children who had forgotten theirs. Her cellmate's name was Marta. Marta had been in the prison long enough for her hair to lose the memory of its color. It was now a dull, undefined shade, like everything else in the camp. "Why are you here?" Anna asked one evening, when the corridor was quiet and the single bulb outside their cell flickered like a tired eye. Marta shrugged. "They say I printed leaflets." She said, "Maybe I did. Maybe I only thought about it. In this place, thinking and doing are the same crime." She gave a half smile, then coughed. The cough stayed longer than a visitor should. At night, when the wind found cracks in the stone, the cell filled with whispers. Some came from other prisoners in nearby cells, trading faint stories like contraband. "Our mayor was arrested." Someone rasped through the wall. "He refused to give them our lists. They took my son." Another voice sobbed. "I don't know where." Others prayed in languages Anna did not understand. But pain needed no translation. One night, she dreamed of the classroom. In the dream, the desks were empty, but the shadows of children sat in them, their faces made of smoke. They stared at her with eyes too large for their heads. "Why didn't you come back?" one of them asked. "I tried," she said in the dream. "I tried to keep you safe. But you're not here." Another shadow said, "You left us." She woke with tears on her face and the taste of chalk in her mouth. Days turned into a slow, grinding ache. Her body shrank, her thoughts did not. They grew sharper, cutting her from the inside. Sometimes, during roll call in the yard, she scanned the faces of other prisoners, searching for small figures, a familiar pair of eyes, a tooth in hand, any sign of the children she had hidden. She found none. "They probably moved them," Marta said once, seeing the question she did not ask. "Or put them somewhere else. You will drive yourself mad trying to guess which hell they chose." "Where do they take children?" Anna whispered. Marta looked at her with the kind of pity that had forgotten how to be gentle. "Anywhere they please," she said. Punishments were public. One cold morning, all prisoners were ordered into the yard. Snow fell in small, mine flakes, too light to soften anything. They stood in rows as a guard pointed to a woman trembling near the front. "This one," he shouted, "stole extra bread from the kitchen." The woman shook her head weakly, but no one listened. They tied her hands to a post and began to beat her with sticks, methodically, as if assembling furniture. The sound of wood on flesh cut through the air. Anna wanted to look away, but the guards watched for that too. She forced herself to keep her gaze somewhere between the woman's feet and the snow, where drops of red slowly bloomed. Afterward, as the prisoners shuffled back to the barracks, one of the guards walked along their line like a man inspecting cattle. He stopped in front of Anna. "You're the teacher," he said in German. She nodded. He smiled with his mouth, not his eyes. "You should understand this," he said. "Discipline is a lesson. Pain is the best teacher." He moved on. That night, the woman who had been punished died quietly on her bunk. The next day, her space was empty. The camp closed around the gap like a wound that refused to show itself. The cold burrowed into bones. The walls sweated with damp. The soup thinned as winter deepened. When snow melted on the barred window, it left streaks like the residue of ghosts trying to escape. One evening, Marta's cough grew worse. She folded into herself on the bunk, each breath a struggle, her body shaking with the effort. Lie down, Anna pleaded. You need rest. Marta gave a weak laugh. Rest, she whispered. Rest from what? From not living. She grabbed Anna's hand with surprising strength. Listen, she hissed, eyes suddenly sharp. You must not let this place turn you into stone. Promise me. I don't understand. Anna said. You will. Marta replied. They don't just want your body. They want your story. They want to write it for you. Don't let them. That night, Marta's breathing slowed. The cough stopped. When the morning horn sounded, she did not wake. Guards dragged her body away as if removing an item from storage. Something broke in Anna then. It was not a loud break. It was quiet, like the sound of thin ice cracking under too much weight. She had watched children taken. She had watched women beaten. She had watched Marta, who had become the one familiar voice in this stone grave, reduced to a number erased in a ledger. She felt a strange, cold clarity settle over her. If she stayed, she would disappear too. Not just her body, but the memory of why she had come. The story of the children she tried to protect would die with her, buried in a grave that did not even have her name. One day, during work detail near the inner fence, she felt the eyes of a guard on her. He was not like the others. He was younger, his jaw less set, his gaze less certain. He watched the prisoners with something that looked almost like shame. When Anna stumbled under the weight of a crate, he stepped forward as if to help, then caught himself and barked a half-hearted order instead. That night, she lay awake, listening to the breathing of strangers in the barracks. The thought that had been growing in the back of her mind pushed forward. I cannot die in here, she whispered to the dark. I cannot let them decide where my story ends. The words felt dangerous. They also felt like the first honest thing she had said in months. That was the moment it became real. The decision formed not as a sudden blaze, but as a slow, steady fire. She would try to escape. Not because she believed she could outrun the war. Not because she thought the world outside was suddenly kind. But because somewhere, in some other place, children might still remember the story of a teacher who tried to protect them. If she stayed, that story ended in a cell. If she tried to leave, it might end somewhere else. Even if that, somewhere else, was a ditch by the road. She chose uncertainty over guaranteed erasure. In that choice, in that quiet burning act of defiance, Anna Kaczmarek stepped onto a path that could not be walked back. Part 3. The plan did not arrive in one piece. It came in fragments, glimpses, patterns, half-heard conversations like pieces of a puzzle scattered through the camp. Anna began with observation. Every roll call, every work detail, every line in the yard became a map. She watched the rhythm of the guards' movements, the rotation of their shifts, the way they held their rifles when they were tired versus when they were alert. The younger guard, the one who had looked at her differently, became a point of focus. His name, she overheard, was Klaus. He was not cruel in the way some others were. He did not laugh when prisoners slipped in the mud. He did not kick them for sport. But he did not stop others either. He existed in a gray space. A man caught between orders and whatever remained of his conscience. One afternoon, during potato peeling duty in a cold, damp shack, Anna sat near a small barred window. Through it, she could see a sliver of the inner fence and, beyond that, the shadow of the outer fence. Two fences, 2 walls of wire, both topped with barbs, with a strip of open ground called no man's land. In between, beyond that, then trees, then the suggestion of a road. It might have been 1,000 miles. The women at the table worked in silence, hands moving mechanically, eyes down. Only one of them, a thin woman with sharp eyes and a scar across her chin, glanced up occasionally toward the same window. Her name was Zofia. Anna had heard whispers about her. They said she had been part of some underground group before her arrest. They said she knew things. As a guard yelled for them to work faster, Zofia leaned slightly closer and muttered, just loud enough for Anna to hear counting fences won't make them disappear. Anna stiffened. I wasn't. Of course you were. Zofia cut in softly. Anyone who still looks out the window is thinking about leaving. She slid a peeled potato toward Anna. They've almost succeeded with the others. She added, most only look at the floor now. Anna swallowed. I don't know what you mean. She lied. Poorly. Zofia's mouth curved into something that was not quite a smile. Then we are both fools, she said, because I keep looking too. Over the next days, their quiet exchanges grew into something like conversation. They never spoke directly about escape knot at first. They talked about small things that were not small, which guard limped, which one drank at night, which one turned his head away during punishments. They talked about weather. Storms, Zofia said once, as rain tapped against the shack roof. They don't like storms. It makes their dogs nervous. It makes their guns rust. Storms are distracting. They talked about routines. How many steps from the barracks to the inner gate? Anna counted one day, murmuring under her breath during roll call. How often they change the watch in the East Tower. How often the younger one swaps shifts. Zofia added, Klaus. He complains about the cold more than the others. He pulls his collar up when the wind comes from the north. It became a secret sport, a way of reclaiming some control. To notice was to resist being erased. One evening, as they walked back from work, Anna stumbled deliberately near where Klaus stood. He reached out, instinctively, to steady her. For a moment, his gloved hand pressed against her arm. Their eyes met. In that instant, she saw something human, their not kindness. Exactly, but the memory of it. Watch your step, he said shortly, withdrawing his hand. Thank you, she whispered. He looked as if the word hurt. Over the following week, she repeated small gestures. Oh, hesitant. Thank you. When he handed her a tin cup. A brief glance during roll call. Nothing obvious enough to draw suspicion. Just enough to plant a seed. This prisoner is aware of you. This prisoner sees you. One bitterly cold night, when the wind howled through the cracks in the barracks, the women huddled together for warmth. Outside, a storm gathered itself. Zofia whispered in the dark. There is a place, she said, where the 2 fences nearly meet. A corner they built in a hurry. The wire is thin there, not like the rest. I saw it once when they marched us near the edge by mistake. Anna listened, her breath shallow. What good is thin wire? Another woman muttered nearby. Thin wire still cuts, but it bends faster. Zofia replied. Silent, and beyond it, Anna asked, a line of trees. Zofia said, then God decides the rest. In the days that followed, Anna paid more attention to the sky. Clouds piled on the horizon like dark mountains. The air grew heavy, wet with the promise of rain. The guards muttered about mud, about their boots, about the cursed weather for once, instead of the cursed prisoners. One afternoon, as they lined up in the yard, Thunder rolled faintly in the distance. Klaus glanced up. Storm coming, he said under his breath, more to himself than anyone else. That night, it arrived. Rain hammered the roofs. Wind screamed through the gaps. The camp transformed into a place of shouting and flapping tarps and slamming doors. Dogs barked incessantly, their nerves shredded by the electric smell of the air. In the barracks, water seeped through the ceiling, dripping onto bunks. Women cursed quietly, shifting to avoid the cold drops. Zofia moved closer to Anna in the dim. If there is ever a time, she whispered, it will be in a storm like this. Anna's heart pounded. How? She breathed. We are locked in. The barracks are watched. The fences. Zofia shook her head. Not tonight, she said. But listen. Learn the sound. Over the next weeks. The plan remained a ghost. They did not speak of it constantly. That would have been dangerous. Instead, they built it slowly from small truths. There was a broken plank near the back of the barracks that sometimes shifted in heavy wind. There was a guard who drank from a flask when he thought no one saw him. On those nights, his walk was less straight, his gaze more blurred. There was a gap between two floodlights where shadows lingered longer. And there was Klaus. One evening, during work in the potato shack, Klaus entered to check the head count. His boots were muddy, his expression tight. As he left, he dropped something whether by accident or on purpose. Anna could not say. A cigarette, unlit. He did not come back to retrieve it. Later, when no one watched, Zofia picked it up and turned it between her fingers. Do you smoke? Anna asked. No, Zofia said, slipping it into her sleeve. But this is not about smoke. This is about memory. That night, as they lay in the dark, Zofia explained, there are still people out there, she said, who think these uniforms make them gods. And there are others who know they are only men wearing cloth. Men who once did other things, worked in shops, played with their children, smoked on street corners with friends. She touched the hidden cigarette. Some of them, she continued, are trying very hard to forget who they were. Some are failing. You think Klaus is one of them? Anna asked. I think, Zofia said. He remembers more than is safe. And a man with a memory is a door. Not always, but sometimes. The next day, during yard duty, rain threatened again. The ground was slick. Prisoners and guards alike moved carefully. At one point, as lines shifted, Anna found herself closer to Klaus than usual. She let her steps falter, as if she might fall. His hand came out again, steadying her elbow. Careful, he muttered. She looked up at him, letting the exhaustion and hunger and quiet desperation in her eyes show. Why are you here? She asked suddenly, the question slipping out before she could stop it. He stiffened. What? He snapped. In this uniform, she said, barely above a whisper. Why are you here? For a moment, something flickered across his face. Annoyance, surprise, guilt. Then he pulled his hand back. Because I was told to be, he said coldly. And because men like you, he added, gesturing vaguely at the line of prisoners, leave us no choice. But his voice lacked conviction. That night, she half expected punishment. Instead, nothing happened. No extra duties. No biting. No call to the commandant's office. The silence felt like a door that had not yet closed. Over time, a wordless understanding grew between Anna, Zofia, and the storm. Storms made the camp clumsy. Storms made the lights flicker. Storms made orders less sharp. One afternoon, as clouds piled thick and low, Zofia pressed something into Anna's hand during work detail. It was not the cigarette. It was a small, twisted piece of wire, bent into a crude shape. "Where did you?" "From the washing line," Zofia whispered. "They do not count pegs, only heads." "What is it for?" Anna asked. "It is nothing," Zofia said. "And everything. A symbol. A reminder that even wire can bend if you find the right angle." She looked Anna in the eyes. "When the real moment comes," she said, "there will be no time to think about whether you are the kind of person who does this. There will be only time to be that person." Anna closed her fingers around the small piece of wire. It dug into her palm. A tiny, painful anchor. That night, as thunder rolled again, she understood something. The plan was not a detailed map. It was a collection of choices waiting for a single, unbearable moment to crystallize. She did not know the exact path. She only knew this when the storm was loud enough, when the guards were distracted enough, when fear and hope balanced on the knife edge of now or never. She would move, not alone, never alone. And in that dark, uncertain future moment, everything her stubborn heart, the children's faces, Marta's last words, Zofia's sharp eyes, Klaus' flicker of humanity would collide into a single, impossible act. Escape was not a route. It was a decision. Part 4. The escape attempt. The night it finally happened did not feel special at first. The day had been like many others, cold, gray, and thin. Thin soup, thin patience, thin hope. But the sky had been busy, quietly building its own plan. By late afternoon, dark clouds formed a low ceiling over the camp. The air felt heavy, charged, as if the world were holding onto a breath it did not know how to release. During evening roll call, a gust of wind tore through the yard, snatching a cap from a guard's head and sending it skimming over the mud. Prisoners watched with dull eyes as the man chased it, cursing. A small, mean satisfaction warmed Anna's chest for a moment. Behind her, Zofia whispered, almost too softly to hear. "Listen to the wind. It is louder than we are tonight." After roll call, they were marched back to the barracks. The first drops of rain began to fall, dotting the dirt like small, dark bruises. Inside, the air was thick with sweat and damp wool. Women shifted on their bunks, muttering about leaking roofs and aching bones. Anna sat on the edge of her bunk, fingers wrapped around the twisted piece of wire Zofia had given her. It pressed into her skin, grounding her in a reality that felt increasingly unreal. "Tonight," she whispered. Zofia lay back, staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks. "Maybe," she murmured. "Maybe not. We don't choose the moment. The moment chooses us." Outside, thunder rolled closer. The rain grew heavier, drumming on the roof like impatient fingers. Then, somewhere in the camp, a shout went up. Another answered. A dog barked. Then another, until it became a chorus of harsh, ragged sound. The wind howled. The lights flickered. For a heartbeat, the barracks slipped into darkness. In that brief blackness, every prisoner held onto something: memory, fear, faith, nothing. The light sputtered back on, weaker this time. The bulb swayed slightly on its wire, casting shadows that shifted like restless ghosts. A guard's boots pounded past outside, accompanied by a stream of curses. Something about the outer fence. Something about a fallen tree branch. Something about damn weather. And extra patrols. Zofia swung her legs off the bunk. "Now," she said quietly, her voice suddenly clear. If there is ever a night, it is this one. Anna's lungs tightened. How? She asked, as she had so many times before. We make a hole in the world. Zofia replied, standing, small enough to fit through, big enough to leave everything else behind. She moved to the back of the barracks, where the wall met the floor. There, behind a row of bunks, a board had long been loose. In storms, it sometimes lifted just enough to let in a whisper of air from the crawl space beneath. Several women watched her, eyes wide. Y'all get us killed. One hissed, we are already dying. Zofia answered calmly, some of us slowly, some of us loudly. I prefer to decide which. She glanced at Anna. Are you coming? She asked. The question slid into Anna's chest like a blade that cut and healed at the same time. Her mind flashed with images: the classroom, the children's hiding place under the floor, Marta's empty bunk, the woman tied to the post in the snow. She nodded. Yes, she whispered. I'm coming. The world shrank to a series of small, precise movements. Zofia wedged her fingers onto the loose board and lifted. It creaked softly, but the storm outside swallowed the sound. Wind punched at the walls, making them shudder. Somewhere, metal clanged as something in the yard fell over. A thin, dark gap appeared beneath the board. Not a path, just a possibility. Zofia slipped into the space first, her body flattening like a shadow. Anna followed, feeling splinters snag at her dress. The floor above pressed close to her back. The earth below was cold and damp, chilling her palms. The smell was of dust, mold, and something old as if forgotten air had been waiting there since before the war. Behind them, one more woman slid into the gap, a quiet figure named Helena, who had hardly spoken since arriving at the camp. Her eyes, however, had always been open. 3 is enough, Zofia whispered. More, and we become a parade. The board lowered gently above them. For a moment, they were buried alive. Anna's heart hammered so loudly it seemed strange no one heard it upstairs. She inched forward, following Zofia's breathing. The crawl space was narrow. Wooden beams forced them to twist and bend in awkward angles. Each movement stirred dust that clung to their throats. Where does this go? Anna whispered. Toward the back. Zofia murmured. Where the foundation is weak. Where the mice come in. They crawled until Anna's muscles burned. Time lost shape in the darkness. Sound came from everywhere and nowhere: the storm outside, the muffled thuds of boots above, the distant bark of dogs, the occasional shout of a guard. At one point, a flash of lightning turned the crawl space into a brief, ghostly X-ray of beams and bodies through a small crack in the wall. Zofia stopped. Here, she said. There is no way out. Helena whispered, voice shaking. Not yet, Zofia replied. Give me your fear. I'll carry it if you can't. Anna heard a faint scraping sound. Zofia was doing something with her hands, pressing against a section of crumbling mortar between stones. The wall shivered slightly. Storms don't just move clouds, Zofia muttered. They move other things too. Earth, stones, people. With a low, gritty sound, a fist-sized piece of mortar fell away. Cold air rushed in, sharp and wet. Anna pressed her eye to the opening. Outside, she saw a slice of the camp, a strip of muddy ground, the bottom of the inner fence, and beyond it, in the dark distance, the suggestion of the outer fence. Rain slashed across everything in slanted lines. Wind bullied the trees, making their branches thrash. Light from a nearby watchtower swung back and forth, its beam hazy in the storm. We can't fit through that, Helena whispered. Not yet, Zofia repeated. She used the twisted wire piece, the one Anna had been carrying, to pry at the edges of the gap, widening it slowly. Each small crumble of stone felt like a tiny victory and a fresh risk. Minutes bled by, when the opening was finally large enough for a shoulder to press through. Zofia looked at them. Once we're out, she said, we don't stop. No matter what we hear, no matter what we think we see. We run to the corner between the fences. Do you remember where it is? Anna nodded. Past the storage shed, near the crooked post, she said, where the ground slopes. Good, Zofia said. Then we pray the storm is louder than our footsteps. She squeezed through the hole first, then turned and reached back. Anna felt her hands, rough and warm, pulling her into the open. The outside air felt like another world. Rain soaked her instantly, running down her neck and spine. The mud grabbed at her shoes with greedy hands. The wind slapped her face, making her eyes water. They crouched low against the wall of the barracks. 3 shadows pressed to stone. The camp was chaos. Guards ran between buildings, shouting about loose tarps and broken floodlights. A section of fencing near the entrance had collapsed under the weight of a fallen branch. Dogs strained at their leashes, barking at the storm itself. The watchtower lights swung wildly, unable to hold still in the wind. Zofia leaned close to Anna's ear. Now, she breathed. They moved, not with the reckless speed of those who believe they cannot be seen, but with the controlled urgency of those who know they might be. At any moment, they skirted the edge of the barracks, staying within the narrow strip where the weak light from the tower did not fully reach. The mud sucked at their feet, threatening to betray them with loud, wet sounds. At one point, a guard burst out of a nearby building, cursing as rain soaked his cigarette. The women froze, backs pressed against the wall, hearts in their throats. He passed within a few meters of them. His eyes narrowed against the rain, his hat pulled low. The storm wrapped them in a shifting curtain of darkness. He did not see them. They reached the corner of the barracks and paused. Ahead lay open ground. Beyond it, the inner fence, its metal glistening with water. Further still, the second fence loomed like a second sentence imposed on the same crime. The strip between them, so-called no man's land, was a smear of mud and shadow. There, Zofia whispered, nodding toward a crooked post near the far end of the yard. That is where they rushed the construction. The wire is weakest there. How do we cross without them seeing? Helena murmured, voice barely audible. Zofia's eyes flicked to the watchtower. By trusting that everything human is flawed, she said, even their plans. The beam of the searchlight swung away, caught for a moment on the falling rain like a halo around nothing. In that brief gap, they ran. Mud splashed up, cold and heavy against their legs. The wind howled around them like a witness. Their breaths came in ragged bursts, swallowed by the storm. Halfway across the yard, a dog barked, sharp and sudden. Anna's heart stopped. A shout followed at instant. Confused, Zofia did not look back. Keep going, she hissed. They reached the inner fence and threw themselves against it, panting. Up close, the wire was a net of metal thorns, glistening with water, humming faintly with the trapped tension of the wind. It seemed impossible. A wall of pain masquerading as order. Zofia's fingers found a section where the strands was slightly farther apart, their tension uneven. Here, she said, help me. Together, they pressed and pulled, widening the gap enough for a body to slip through if that body did not mind being cut. Anna pushed against the wire, It bit into her palms, sharp and unforgiving. Warmth bloomed where it broke skin, quickly washed away by the rain. She thought of children's hands on paper, tracing letters. She thought of chalk dust on her fingers. She thought of how easily some things wiped clean. Go, Zofia urged. You first. Anna hesitated. What about you? She asked. We don't have time to be polite. Zofia snapped, but her eyes were kind. Move. Anna squeezed through the gap. Metal claws raked her arms inside. Fabric tore. Pain flared, hot and bright, then dulled beneath the cold. She fell onto the mud on the other side. Breath knocked from her lungs. Helena followed, stifling a cry as the wire kissed her skin with fresh red lines. Zofia was last. As she pushed through, a stronger gust of wind shoved them all against the fence. For a moment, the metal seemed to close around them like teeth. Then they were free, tumbling into the narrow strip of land between the two fences. The outer fence loomed above them, taller and more rigid than the first. From the watchtower, a beam of light sliced across the yard. It passed over the inner fence, lingered briefly on the barracks, then moved on. Anna lay pressed against the wet ground, breathing hard, listening. Shouts, but not close. Dogs barking, but not right here. The storm had become their accomplice, roaring over everything, blurring the edges between sound and silence. Zofia scrambled to her knees. This one, she gasped, fingers searching along the outer fence. This one is stronger. Not much we can do but slip under if there is a place. Under, Helena repeated, eyes wide. There is no. Her hand brushed something, near the crooked post, where the ground sloped slightly. The earth had eroded in the rain. A small hollow had formed beneath the bottom strand of the fence. Not a tunnel, not a safe passage, just a narrow, muddy space where the wire did not quite touch the ground. Enough for a body to flatten itself and try to become smaller than fear. One at a time, Zofia said. Quickly, Anna's heart hammered. It'll go. Helena whispered suddenly. If I stay, I will freeze anyway. She dropped to the ground and wriggled forward, pressing her cheek into the cold mud. The wire scratched at her back as she slid under, the world narrowing to the harsh scrape of her breath and the taste of dirt. For a terrifying second, she stuck her coat catching on a barb. Anna reached out, grabbing the fabric, pulling, tearing. Helena popped free on the other side, gasping, "Run to the trees," Zofia hissed. "And don't look back." Helena hesitated only a heartbeat, then scrambled up and sprinted toward the dark line of forest beyond the fence. Your turn, Zofia told Anna. Rain ran unchecked down Anna's face, mingling with sweat and blood. She lowered herself into the mud, feeling the cold bite through to her bones. The fence above her seemed to sink closer, as if trying to hold her in this strip of nowhere. She thought of the last words she had written on the classroom board. Home. Then she pushed. The wire scraped across her back and hips. A barb snagged her dress, yanking her backward. Panic flared, hot and wild. For a moment, she could not breathe. The world was just mud and metal and the crushing weight of the sky. Hands grabbed her shoulders from behind. From this side of the fence. Zofia, breathe. Zofia whispered fiercely. Or they win. Push. Anna, you have pushed children into a better world your whole life. Now push yourself. Anna exhaled. Hard. The fabric tore. She slid forward, the wire gouging a final line along her skin before releasing her. She spilled out onto the other side, the ground suddenly feeling different, less claimed. She rolled onto her back, staring up at the wild sky for half a second. then scrambled to her feet. Go, Zofia hissed. Do you want to give them the pleasure of catching all of us in a neat row? Anna's legs moved before her mind did. She ran. The trees in the distance seemed impossibly far, but they grew with each desperate step. The wind pushed against her, then seemed to shove her forward. Behind her, she heard Zofia drop to the ground, beginning her own crawl under the fence. A shout cut through the storm. Not from the yard, from the watchtower. The searchlight jerked violently, swinging toward their section of the fence. Anna's heart lurched. No, she whispered to the wind. Not now. Not yet. The light sliced across the inner fence. Then the strip between fences. Then there, Zofia's body, halfway under the outer fence. A struggling shape in the mud. Stop. A voice bellowed in German. The rifle cracked. Anna flinched as the sound tore the sky open. For a moment, she did not know if the bullet had found flesh or just air. Then Zofia jerked, her back arching. A dark bloom spread across the mud. Zofia. Anna screamed before she could stop herself. Another shout from the tower. Another shot. Wilder this time. The bullet hit the ground near Anna's feet, sending a spray of wet dirt against her legs. From the yard below, more voices joined the first. Dogs barked hysterically. Boots pounded toward the corner of the camp. The storm had given them a head start. Now it seemed to have turned to watch. Anna took a step toward the fence, toward Zofia's struggling form. Zofia's eyes met hers. In them, there was pain, and something like anger, and something like love. Run, Zofia mouthed. The word hit Anna harder than the gunshots. She shook her head. I can't leave you, she shouted over the wind. Zofia's mouth twisted into something like a familiar grimace of determination and resignation intertwined. You already did, she rasped, voice thin but fierce. You stepped over. That is what matters. Don't come back under the wire for me. Don't you dare. Guards spilled into the space between the fences like ants swarming a broken line. One of them grabbed Zofia's ankles, yanking her back toward the campside. Her body scraped against the mud and wire. Another raised his rifle toward the trees, toward the direction of Anna and Helena. A spotlight beam swept over the outer ground. Searching. For a moment, it landed on Anna, freezing her in a harsh white circle. She felt naked, exposed, a single figure against the breathless dark. Then something happened. The beam jerked away. It swung up, then down, then away toward another corner of the yard, as if the man controlling it had slipped, or turned his wrist intentionally. In the rain-blurred outline of the tower, Anna saw a silhouette. Broad shoulders, a cab, the faint glint of glasses. Klaus. He stood behind the searchlight, one hand on its handle. Even from that distance, even through the curtain of rain, she felt his gaze find her. Their worlds held each other for a single, impossible heartbeat. Then he turned the light further away, bathing an empty section of fence in harsh brilliance. Over there, someone shouted. I saw movement. Chaos exploded in the wrong direction. Guards ran toward nothing. Dogs pulled at leashes toward shadows. Klaus stepped back from the light, letting another man take over. To anyone watching, it might have looked like simple clumsiness, a mistake in a storm. To Anna, it looked like a choice. Zofia's scream snapped her back. The guards had dragged her fully back into the camp, leaving a smear of dark red across the mud. One of them kicked her side. Another shouted something about escape attempts and examples. Anna's legs trembled. She wanted to run to the fence, She wanted to tear it down with her bare hands. She wanted to put herself between Zofia and the boots and the guns and the war and say, "Take me instead." She has fought enough. But Zofia's last look pinned her in place. It held not pleading, but command. Run. Anna ran. She sprinted toward the trees, her lungs burning, her vision swimming with rain and tears. Branches reached out to grab her, scratching her arms and face. Roots tried to trip her. She did not stop. Behind her, the sounds of the camp grew smaller. Shouts blurred into distant echoes. Gunshots faded into the growl of thunder. The forest swallowed her. Roots, wet leaves, tangled branches, the smell of earth and rot. The uneven ground threatened to throw her down with every step. She stumbled once, twice, then went down hard on her knees, hands sinking into cold mud. For a moment, she stood there, gasping. The storm raged above, unbothered by her smallness. Somewhere close, someone sobbed. Helena. Anna crawled toward the sound and found the younger woman huddled beneath a thick tree, arms wrapped around herself, shaking violently. "I thought you were shot," Helena whispered. "I heard." "Not me," Anna said hoarsely. "Zofia." The name was a wound. They stayed like that for a long moment. Two small shapes under the indifferent trees. Finally, Anna pushed herself upright. "We can't stay here," she said. "At dawn, they will search. Even now, they might send dogs." "Where do we go?" Helena asked, eyes wide with terror. "There is nothing, just more war." Anna looked into the darkness between the trees. Somewhere, beyond this forest, there might be a village, or a road, or another camp, or a ditch, or a chance, however small, at something else. "We go forward," she said, "because backward is a place we already know, and I refuse to go back." She thought of the children. If any of them had survived, if any had been hidden by someone else, if any had been sent away and saved, they would not be in the camp. They would be out here too, somewhere, in the broken world. She could not promise them safety. She could only promise not to stop walking toward the possibility of it. She held out her hand. "Come," she said. Helena took it. Together, they stepped deeper into the shadows beyond the wire. Part 5. The outcome and moral. They walked until their legs felt like hollow sticks. The storm slowly spent itself, rain easing to a miserable drizzle, then finally stopping. The wind relaxed, leaving a strange, heavy silence in its wake. The forest changed with the light. At first, everything was a blur of gray. Then, as clouds shifted and a weak dawn bled into the sky, shapes emerged, trees like thin soldiers, fallen branches like broken weapons, patches of moss like old bruises on the earth. Anna's clothes clung to her skin, soaked through. Every cut from the wire stung with the cold. Mud caked her shoes, making each step an act of will. Helena moved beside her like a ghost, eyes distant, lips blue. "We need shelter," Anna said eventually, her voice rough. "Somewhere to rest, somewhere to think." They found a shallow ditch near a cluster of rocks, partially hidden by low shrubs. It was not much, but it was lower than the surrounding ground, and from the road, if there was one nearby, would be hard to see. They collapsed there, breathing hard. Silence settled over them, thick and fragile. After a while, Helena whispered, "Do you think they killed her?" Anna stared at a leaf half buried in the mud. "In that place," she said quietly, "there are many ways to kill someone. Only one of them stops the heart." Helena frowned. "I don't understand." Anna swallowed. They tried to kill Marta long before her body gave up. She said, they took her work, her words, her name. They tried to turn her into a ghost while she was still breathing. She thought of Zofia. No matter what they do to her today. Anna said, voice firming, they cannot take away what she already did. She made a hole in their wall. She taught us how to step through it. She reminded us that their fences are not God. She looked at Helena. As long as we remember her, she is not dead in the way they want her to be. Helena was silent for a moment. I am afraid, she admitted. Afraid of being caught. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of what is out here. So am I, Anna replied. She paused, then added, but I was afraid in there too. At least out here. My fear belongs to me. Hours passed in a strange, stretched way. They rested, shared the last crumbs of bread Zofia had urged them to hide in their sleeves days before, drank rainwater from a shallow puddle, ignoring the taste of dirt. As the light grew, so did the risks. The camp was behind them, but not far enough. Patrols could be sent into the forest. Villagers, if there were any, might be too frightened or too eager to please the occupier's to offer help. Every living person was both a possibility and a threat. We need to look like anyone else, Helena said, not like escaped prisoners. Anna glanced down at herself. Her dress, though torn and stained, was not visibly marked like the uniforms of some prisoners. She still wore the thin camp dress they had given her. But it looked, in this light, like any poor woman's simple clothing. Our faces will give us away before our clothes do. She murmured, we have camp eyes now. Camp eyes? Helena asked. The kind that have seen too much and not enough at the same time. Anna said softly. They began to walk again. Eventually, the forest thinned. Trees gave way to scrub, then to open fields, scarred by tire tracks and shell holes. In the distance, a narrow road cut through the landscape like a wound. They crouched behind a hedgerow and watched. For a long time, nothing moved. No trucks, no soldiers, no carts, just the occasional bird, surprised to still be alive. Do we cross? Helena whispered. If we don't, we stay animals in the woods. Anna answered. If we do, we become people again. People can be hunted, but they can also be helped. Helena nodded slowly. Anna took a deep breath. We walk, she said. Not run, not creep. We walk like women who belong somewhere and are late getting there. They stepped onto the road. Each footfall sounded too loud. The road felt exposed. An invitation for bullets. The sky above seemed suddenly vast, with nowhere to hide. They walked anyway. After some time, a space longer than a minute, shorter than an hour, a shape appeared in the distance. A cart, pulled by a tired horse. On the cart sat an old man with a cap pulled low over his brow. In the back, a pile of firewood, or perhaps something beneath it. Anna's stomach twisted. Keep walking, she murmured. Don't stare. Don't look away too fast either. As the cart drew closer, the old man's eyes flicked over them briefly. Two women, wet, mud-streaked, thin, refugees, prisoners, widows. In this world, such questions had become common as weather. The cart slowed slightly as it neared them, then stopped altogether. The horse snorted, breath clouding in the chilly air. The old man looked at them properly now. Bad night to be out, he said in their language, his voice roughened by years and smoke. Anna's brain raced. We were visiting family, she said. We stayed longer than we should have. The storm, the lie felt fragile. made of thin glass. The old man's gaze lingered on the scratches on their arms, the torn fabric, the haunted look in their eyes. "You're from the camp," he said quietly. Helena flinched. "When?" Anna began. "Don't bother lying," he said. "I've been hauling wood past that place for months. I see faces. I remember them. I don't forget as easily as your captors think old men do." He spat on the side of the road, a gesture of contempt not directed at them. "I also see their trucks," he added. "Full going in, lighter coming back." He glanced up and down the road. "I shouldn't stop," he muttered. "Anyone could come by. They'll take my horse, my cart, maybe my life." Anna felt hope shrivel. She nodded. "We understand," she said softly. "We will keep walking." He watched them turn away. "Wait," he said. They stopped. He sighed, a sound carrying the weight of too many funerals. "Get in," he said gruffly. Helena stared. "In the cart," she stammered. "No, in my pockets." He snapped. "Yes, in the cart, under the wood. Quickly, before my common sense returns." They scrambled up, hands shaking, and burrowed beneath the pile of logs. Rough bark scraped their skin. The smell of sap and damp earth filled their noses. The old man threw a tattered tarp over the wood. "If you sneeze, I'll throw you off myself," he muttered. "If soldiers stop us." "You are 2 sacks of potatoes I haven't been paid for yet." "Stay sacks." The cart jolted forward. Time became a series of bumps and muffled sounds, the creak of wheels, the clop of hooves, the distant murmur of voices in unseen places. At one point, the cart stopped abruptly. Anna's heart thundered. Boots approached. A harsh voice demanded papers. The old man replied in a tone of bored politeness, complaining about the storm, about the weight of the wood, about his back. A rifle butt jabbed the side of the cart, shaking the logs. One piece shifted, sliding against Anna's shoulder. She held her breath until her lungs burned. "I have nothing you want," the old man grumbled, "unless you now tax firewood more than blood." The soldier snorted. "Move along then," he said. Boots retreated. The cart jolted forward again. Latter minutes, hours, another lifetime. He stopped, this time with more care. The old man pulled back the tarp and shifted some logs aside. "Out," he said. "This is as far as I go. Any further, and I might as well drive you straight to the commandant's door and ask for metal." They climbed down, limbs stiff. Around them lay a small cluster of houses, set back from the road. Smoke curled from chimneys. A church steeple pierced the gray sky, its bell silent. "This is my village," the old man said. "We live small here. Sometimes we live quiet enough that even war forgets we exist for a little while." He rubbed a hand over his face. "My sister's house is there," he said, nodding at a narrow home with a crooked roof. "She lost her son in the last war. She has room in her grief for more people than her walls can hold." Anna felt tears sting her eyes. "Why are you helping us?" she asked. "You don't know us." The old man looked at her, then away. "I had a teacher once," he said slowly. "Long time ago, before uniforms changed, before flags changed. She gave me bread when I came to school with none. She made me learn to read when I thought I had no use for words. She told me that knowledge is a kind of freedom no one can take." He met her gaze again. "When they started arresting teachers," he said, "I didn't forget that." He clicked his tongue at the horse. "You remind me of her," he added. "Same stubborn eyes. Same way of standing like the world has no right to break you." even as it tries. He shrugged. Besides, he said, if I don't help someone in this war, then the war has already won in my own bones. He handed Anna a small cloth bundle. Inside were a few potatoes, a crust of bread, and a tiny carved wooden bird on a string. For luck, he said gruffly, or for reminding you that things with wings aren't meant for cages. He pointed to his sister's house. Go now, he said, before someone sees us talking so long. They went. The old woman who opened the door looked at them with the practiced eye of someone who had seen too much suffering to be surprised by any new shape it took. Without asking questions, she stepped aside. Said, "No," she said. You smell like the inside of a grave. We will wash that off first. Then we will decide what we tell the neighbors and what we keep as a secret between my stove and these walls. In the days that followed, Anna and Helena remained hidden in that small house. They slept on a thin mattress in a corner, listening to the ordinary sounds of a life that still dared to exist, water boiling, chickens clucking, the creak of a chair. Sometimes, soldiers came through the village. They knocked on doors. They asked questions. They took things. They never stayed long. The old woman told anyone who asked that her niece and friend had come from a bombed-out city, that they were helping with chores in exchange for a roof. Few pressed further. Everyone had their own secrets to guard. As weeks turned into months, the front lines of the war shifted. Rumors trickled in like weak tea, the occupiers losing ground here, gaining their camps being evacuated, whole trains vanishing into smoke. Anna lived in a strange limbo between fear and waiting. One morning, when the snow finally began to melt, a stranger knocked on the door. He carried a bundle of newspapers and a satchel of letters. His boots were muddy, his coat patched. He called himself a courier. News from everywhere, he said. Mostly bad, some less bad. The old woman took him into the kitchen and gave him soup. He talked as he ate, words spilling out like crumbs. Did you hear? He said. They say some camps have been found by the advancing armies. Terrible stories. Piles of bodies. Survivors like walking bones. Lists of names. Half burned. Anna's throat tightened. List, she asked. He nodded. They write them down, he said. The names of the living, the dead, when they can guess. They send these lists to towns, to churches, to offices. People look for their relatives. He rummaged in his satchel. I have copies from one such place, he said. Near here, a camp not far from our province. Maybe someone you know is on them. He spread papers on the table. Columns of names, some with cross marks beside them, some underlined, many smudged. Anna's eyes scanned the pages. Marta's surname appeared once, then nothing more. Her chest ached. Then she saw it. Zofia Nowak. Next to the name, a note: deceased, executed after escape attempt. The letters swam. Anna closed her eyes. For a moment, grief rose like a wave that threatened to drown her. Then something else joined it. Pride, not the kind that boasts, the kind that stands. Zofia, who had refused to let fences be the last lines written in her story. Zofia, who had accepted the risk with open eyes. Zofia, who had ordered Anna to run, not out of cruelty, but out of a cold, clear understanding that someone had to carry the story forward. Anna whispered her name, letting it be a prayer and a promise at once. Do you know her? The courier asked. Yes, Anna said quietly. I knew her. He shrugged. Then you are one of the few, he said. Most who die in those places have no one left to speak their names. Later that night, sitting by the small window of the attic where she now slept. Anna made a decision. She could not go back to the classroom she had known. That building might be gone. Those children might be scattered like ashes. But as long as she breathed, she could still do the one thing she had always done. She could teach. Not in a formal room with desks and chalk, but in kitchens and barns and church basements. To children living in ruins. To adults whose eyes had forgotten how to look at anything but the ground. She could teach them. Not dates and kings and lines on a map, but the story of what had been done, and what had been resisted, and what it meant to be human in a time when humanity had been declared a crime. Years later, long after the war ended and uniforms changed again, a woman with silver threading her dark hair would stand in front of a group of children in a new school in a rebuilt town. On the wall behind her, a map not of borders, but of rivers and mountains and paths. Above the door, a small carved wooden bird on a string. When I was young, she would say, there was a time when some people decided that certain lives were worth less than others. They built fences and walls and said that was the way of the world. The children would listen, their eyes wide. They were wrong. She would continue. They were always wrong. And it is your task, if such times ever come again, to remember that no uniform, no gun, no order can change the truth of a person's worth. Sometimes, at night, when the school was empty and the corridors echoed with the ghost of footsteps, she would visit her classroom alone. She would stand at the board, chalk in hand. Her writing was slower now, but steady. She would write one word, home, not as a place with four walls, but as a state of being where dignity is not a luxury, where children do not have to hide under floors, where teachers are not arrested for loving their students more than their own safety. She would think of the old camp, now an overgrown ruin, of the barracks, of the fences, of the corner where the wire had once bent. She would think of Marta, of Helena, who had gone on to work in a hospital, refusing to turn away from any wounded, no matter their past, of the old woman with the crooked roof, of the cart and the tired horse. She would think of Klaus, whose fate she never learned. Had he been tried and condemned? Had he gone on to live a quiet life, telling himself he had only been following orders? Had he ever spoken aloud about the night he turned the searchlight away from a woman's fleeing shadow? She did not know. War left many questions unanswered, like letters lost in the post. But she knew this on that night, in that storm, in that single decisive twist of his wrist. He had remembered he was a man before he was a uniform. That memory had made a path in the world for her feet to find. And she knew that Zofia had died not as a number, not as an erased line in a ledger, but as someone whose choices still rippled through the world. Her story did not end at the fence. It continued every time Anna stood in front of children and refused to let them be taught only what those in power found convenient. The cost of war, Anna had learned, was not just measured in bodies buried. It was measured in stories lost, in truth silenced, in futures bent out of shape. The value of human dignity, she had sown, lay in the smallest acts of defiance, a stolen loaf shared, a child hidden, a light turned away from the right place at the wrong time, and the meaning of freedom. For someone who had once been nothing more than a number behind a wire, was not the absence of walls. It was the choice, every day, not to become the kind of person who built them. On some evenings, when the sun set just right and the shadows in her classroom stretched long and thin, she would close her eyes and almost hear distant thunder. She would see the camp again, not as a place of finality, but as a dark chapter in a longer story. Her story, Zofia's story, the children's story. And she would whisper, to the empty room and to whoever might still be listening beyond the veil of time, you did not win. Not to the war, not to the people who believed they could turn freedom into a privilege and kindness into a crime. You did not win, she would repeat, softer now, more a promise than a taunt. Then she would open her eyes, lift the chalk, and begin another lesson. Outside, the world would continue in its noisy, flawed way. Inside, in that small room where a woman who had survived fences now drew paths on a board, something sacred remained untouched: the quiet, stubborn belief that as long as someone was willing to tell the story of those who were nearly erased, the shadows of war could never fully swallow the light. And in that space between fear and hope, between memory and tomorrow, freedom lived, not as a flag, not as a law, but as a voice, speaking softly at first, then louder. I was there. I saw. I remember. And I will not be silent.